So for this week, we're just going to show you CRUD methodology, and that means creating, reading, updating, and deleting. And so to do that, I'm going to make it really simple. I'm going to create a one field table, literally, and this will be called users, okay? So I'm going to call this users, and I'll give it a primary key too, so it'll be two fields, okay? And this will be something like ID, integer, primary key, auto increment, with an index, and then I'll just do something like full name, varchar 255. So this is my entire database, and we'll be working with this to teach you how to insert a record, how to update a record, how to delete a record, and how to select all the records, okay? And I'll make different scripts for each one. Okay, so now that we have this, let's go ahead and create a form that connects to the database. We already have our connection up, so let's look at that real quick. This is our connection, okay? I'm going to comment out this connection and go with the original one. I'll keep it commented out, but I want this to be as simple as possible. So I have my connection right here. My next step is I'm going to create an insert, okay? And this will be example of inserting data from a form with PHP and PHP data objects, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and simply include the connection.php, okay? Now don't get hung up on this. I'm going to keep this as minimal as possible. We're going to do it extremely simply in this case. So I'm going to create a form real quick. Now notice I don't even have HTML. I have no body tag, nothing like that. I don't want to get caught up in any semantics. I'm going to call this insert.php. Okay. And my form action can go to insert.php. We've been over the forms earlier, but it takes a lot of practice to get used to it if you're new to this. So I'm just going to create a one-field form because the name that we have is full name. Name equals, and we'll call this full name. I like to keep my name fields the same as the fields in the database. And as you can see right there, there's a full name. So all I need to do is get data from this form and if you need motivation on learning this, what I would say is don't move forward until you feel you're comfortable with what you already see on the page. Because we're going to do this piecemeal. It's going to be very easy and straightforward and just a couple of lines, okay? So right now we have to make sure that we don't insert values when the page loads, empty values. So I'm going to make sure that I test to see that the submit button, and as a review, remember PHP only understands name fields inside the HTML. I'm going to make sure that the submit button is equal to enter value. And if it is, we can insert here. Now I'm not going to do any parametric binding. I'm not going to do anything quite that advanced yet. I'm simply going to take our data and put it in the database. We need to master this before we move forward, especially since this is an entry-level course, okay? So how do we get the value that the user enters in the full name field? Well, we'll create a variable called full name, and we'll make it equal to the post value of full name. That's because our method is post, and our name is full name. So now we have this value in a variable. Hopefully it equals something. And what I can do is do a prepared statement. Now, if you recall, our connection has a variable that equals our connection. So what I can do is do something like SQL equals scalar dbh prepare. Why dbh? Well, that's because, well, actually it's PDO. So I'll change this to dbh for database handle. I kind of like that variable better. It's a little bit more of what I'm used to. You can use either one, of course. And remember, we copied that straight from this article right here. And that's why we have it. So, see, it's called PDO. But let's get back to our task at hand. And so this is called a prepared statement. This is an instance method of this object, dbh, which is the connection. So this connection has methods or functions that are pre-built in that will work for us. And it will actually prepare a statement that we can apply to our database. So let's insert into, and do you remember our database name? It was, our table name is users, and our field is username, full name. So we're going to insert into users, and then we'll list the field that we're inserting. And then we'll put the values, which will be our variable called full name. Whoopsie. Now, you'll notice that this entire statement is in quotes, and we have quotes right here as well. I'm going to make them single quotes. So now we've got a prepared statement, but at this point, nothing's happened. For us to have something happen, we need to write SQL execute. And this will enact our query. Now, right now, this is all I want you to look at. I want you to just, I'm not going to write a condition on submit. I'm not going to do any troubleshooting. I'm not going to, bind this into a separate area where I can pass a value and do what's called parametric binding. All I want to do is get the value, write the SQL query in here, and execute it. This is what PDO does. It prepares statements. So let's go to our server, which is localhost insert.php, and I'm going to type in Chris Secor. We'll enter the value, and then I'll go to my database and hit refresh. Because I have no value here, I have to see what happened. So in this case, one way to tell is to output our variable, which is SQL, with the error info. And this would tell us if I made a mistake with my query. All right, so now I'll write John Smith, hit enter, and I get this. Excellent. Now you have an error in your SQL syntax. Check the manual it describes for for my version for the right syntax to use in your full name values John Smith. Okay. Well, let's look back at my section right here. I have insert into users full name. Oh, I think I may have made a mistake with the values of the variable here. So now what I can do is run inside here and hit refresh and do Chris Secor, hit the value, and I get no error, and I can go to my browse, and there's Chris Secor, and notice how the ID has a value. Because what I made a mistake on was the type of quotes that I used. I put them in the field name. The field names don't need quotes. It's the value that has the variable that does this. So this is the value that I inserted. Well, let's insert a couple more and run a couple more tests. I did John Smith. Let's do Kim Atkins. Enter value and hit browse. So notice how I'm checking my database each time and I'm getting data in there. So let's stop it at that, and we're going to make this grow and do this repetitively, but right now I don't want to clutter your minds with more than is necessary. I have a form. It goes to insert.php. There's a method called post. I'm using post here and here. And then I have a text field called full name. So I grab the variable from the form and pass it directly into my query using this insert statement that's SQL. Once I execute it, it's good. So that is how you can insert values from a form into a database. Keep in mind that this is a very rare case where you only have one field. Ordinarily, you would have multiple fields, and you would list multiple tables or multiple fields, like field 1, field 2, and then you'd have your values comma separated as well in the values section. But in this case, we're going to keep it simple and make sure it works, okay? And once you're happy that it works, you can simply comment out the error handling and you'll be good to go. So any questions on this, please don't hesitate to reach out to me.